There is a crisis on America's border with Mexico. The number of people arriving there has skyrocketed in the years since the pandemic, when crossings fell drastically. The scenes coming from the border and from many U.S. cities that have been touched by the migrant crisis have helped elevate the issue in voters' minds. Yes, border crossings are up, but the type of migrants coming, where they're from, and why they're making the often treacherous journey to the southern border has changed over the years. The U.S. immigration system simply was not designed or resourced to deal with the types of people arriving today. People from a growing variety of countries fleeing crisis and seeking asylum, often with their families. Today, the Justice in America news team is on location in Seattle, Washington, speaking with Matt Werdeman, the attorney at Conley Law Office, who represented his client, Nestor Munki, a recent political refugee from Cameroon, to tell his harrowing and almost unbelievable true story of escaping from his native country, southern Cameroon, because he became a hunted man because he dared to videotape a southern Cameroon rally for independence on Facebook. And to discuss the extraordinary legal challenges Matt faced to successfully get Nestor and his family asylum in the U.S. in this new network TV special, Justice in America, Nestor Munki story. This is the Insider Exclusive, live from Seattle, Washington. It is my great pleasure to introduce Matt Werdeman. Welcome to the show, Matt.
Thank you.
You are the most unusual lawyer I've ever met, and I've met a lot of them. And the reason I say that is you didn't come directly the typical path, go to college, undergrad, then go to law school. No, you did not. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because we are here today covering a case where you helped somebody get political asylum here in the United States. And had it not been for your vast international experience, you probably wouldn't have any interest in this. So please share with us, besides the fact that you are a well-known lawyer, winning many cases here in the United States, what was this pre-law career?
Yeah, I didn't, have any plans to go into the law after college. I majored in theater and history. And then I just kind of got the travel bug after college. So I think in 2003, I was a hiking and kayak guide in Alaska. Then I moved to Mexico, taught English there.
Yeah, but let me interrupt you here for a second, because oftentimes when you're young, you have parents that are saying, what are you doing with your life? You're wasting your life. When are you really going to get a job? Did you have any of that in your life?
No, my parents were super supportive. Really? I also think that I'm very stubborn, so it wouldn't have mattered if they had not been supportive. But I think, my dad was in the Navy, traveled the whole world, and I think he saw the value of traveling the world.
So go on with that. After Mexico, what?
After Mexico, then I moved to Korea, just kind of on a whim. I started teaching there. I also started my own theater company in Korea.
It's amazing. Just on a whim, you woke up one day and said, I'm going to Seoul, Korea.
Yeah.
And didn't know anybody there.
And then I started working in Switzerland. I started out as a English mountain biking instructor. And then, so I'd spend, 4 to 6 months a year in Switzerland. Did that for 7 years. And then in that off season, I would go back to Korea to teach English. And then I started teaching high school here in Washington. So I was doing high school, and then I'd go to Switzerland.
Did you have a teaching credential?
No. So when I started teaching in the States, I got what's called a conditional certificate.
You were teaching at probably a religious school?
Heavens no. A private kind of liberal arts.
They needed teachers.
Yeah. And I taught science, actually, which was not my background. But
yeah, I can imagine looking at your resume in Washington, D.C. and saying, wait a minute, this guy's been here and there and there and there. And what's to say if we hire him now, he's not going to be over there in 6 months?
I do think that did play into the job search many times. The high school that I was at eventually closed down, and so I was at a turning point. I was working 4 jobs to pay my mortgage, and I thought, all right, I've got to go for an advanced degree. I don't have any sort of glamorous story about why I wanted to become a lawyer. It was doctor or lawyer were my 2 interests, and at that point I was like 31, 32, and going to med school and all that was going to take way too long. Law school's 3 years, and I actually initially wanted to be an international law attorney just because I'd spent, the past 8 years abroad, but quickly learned that that's really just business. So I got into personal injury, medical malpractice, and my dad was a doctor, my mom's a nurse, so it kind of blended my interest of medicine and law.
Yeah, so let's talk about your daytime job now. Mm-hmm. You are a well-known, you specialize in medical malpractice, right?
Correct.
In the state of Washington, all over the United States, actually, right? And you have won some pretty amazing verdicts. I was looking at it, $25 million jury verdict, $15 million. A lot of medical malpractice is a difficult practice because you almost have to know as much as a doctor, because with the gibberish that they throw at you and say, well, we use reasonable care, that's not always true, is it? And you can point out where they didn't use reasonable care. But in your spare time, you decided to volunteer to help people coming into the United States, right? How'd that happen?
It started with the kids being separated from their families and being put in cages. And yeah. And, seeing videos of that, I thought, okay, how can I help? Yeah. And so there's an amazing organization here in Washington called the Northwest Immigrant Rights Project. So I reached out to them and I said, hey, how can I want to help in some way. And they said, well, with the news coverage, we've got plenty of volunteers to deal with trying to get families reunited. But what we really need help with is folks to represent detained asylum seekers.
Right. In other words, they wanted you to be kind of like an immigration lawyer, yeah, of which you knew nothing.
Not a thing at all.
Okay. So that was another challenge, right?
And it's a very narrow area of immigration law that I practice. It's, detained asylum seekers only. But it still is a pretty big body of law just for that.
I think your very first case was Nestor Munki.
Yes.
And he was from Cameroon.
Correct.
Before you tell us a little bit about Nestor, we want to show a clip right now of why you were even involved with him and what was going on in Cameroon at that time. So let's do that now.
At least 15 people have been killed in a new bout of fighting between Cameroon army troops and separatist rebels. The two sides said on Tuesday in a rise in violence since President Paul Biya won a 7th term in power in October. The conflict between Anglophone separatists who want to create an independent state called Ambazonia and government forces has killed more than 400 people in western Cameroon since last year and has emerged as Biya's greatest security problem in nearly 4 decades of rule.
Now that we've seen that, tell us who Nestor Munki is.
Nestor is a wonderful and amazing human being. He is from the Anglophone part of Cameroon, also called Southern Cameroon.
It's separated, Francophile section and the southern part.
All the government business, all teaching, law enforcement, the courts, everything was in French. And so the folks in Southern Cameroon started protesting and said, hey, we want these important dealings to be in English as well. We want our kids to, go to school in English because it's a lot tougher when all that stuff is in a language you possibly don't speak. And so Nestor started protesting in 2016 and joined a group called the Southern Cameroon National Council. And he went to, there was a big rally planned in September of 2017. And it was staged to coincide with the Cameroonian president, Paul Biya, speaking to the United Nations. And the Cameroon's military showed up in a helicopter and started firing down on protesters. And Nestor was one of the leaders of that protest, and he was also broadcasting it on Facebook Live. And then a couple days later, at 5 a.m., the gendarmerie pounded on his door and said, come out. If we have to break this door down, you know what's going to happen. And so he comes out, and they arrested him and kept him locked up for about a month, repeated torture to try and get the names of other SCNC members, which he would not give up. And he was briefly let out of jail. One of the village elders bribed the police to let him out to attend the birth of his son. Or his son had actually been born, and his wife was having complications from that. So they let him out on the condition that he had to return. And then about a month later, the village elder that helped get him out of jail was told, hey, he's got to come back. And so at that point, Nestor and his family fled to another, his childhood village in Cameroon. And then shortly after that, he found out from childhood friends that there were military in the town showing his picture. And he then had to flee to Nigeria. And then from, in Nigeria, they were extraditing SCNC members back to Cameroon. And he met a human rights aid worker in Nigeria who said, you should consider going to America and applying for asylum. And so he made the very difficult decision to leave his family behind to protect not only himself, but them, and flew to Ecuador and then made his way to Tijuana over a period of 2 months.
Through the southern border.
Yep.
Okay. And how did he end up in Washington?
So initially he was at the detention center in San Ysidro. Then they sent him to Arizona, and then they sent him to the detention center in Tacoma, Washington. And that's where I had volunteered to provide pro bono representation, and he was my first client.
There's a lot of people there, correct?
Yes.
Did you select him, or was he brought?
He was brought to me. It said, my mentor, who's now a good friend, Bill Schwartz with Northwest Immigrant Rights Project, set the two of us up. He said, hey, I think this is a good case for you. And so I went to meet with Nestor, and I think 3 attorneys had already declined to take his case. Truthfully, I didn't know that was an option. I thought, this is the guy you're assigned, you're going to represent him. And, it's kind of a weird meeting because he's never seen me before. I've never seen him before. And you're asking someone to place an immense amount of trust in you, because with these asylum cases, they're literally life and death. If he had been sent back to Cameroon, he would have been picked up at the airport, sent to the Kondenge prison, and most likely died there. So it's, I remember he had kind of a deer in the headlights look when I first met him. And then we would, meet 3-4 times a week. I'd come to the detention center and talk to him and get to know his story. And we became really good friends through that process. So
now we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of he's seeking political asylum. What did he bring with him? what did you have to, and this was completely new to you, was the immigration judges that you went before, were they receptive to listening? Talk to us about this.
So there's the immigration judges that, have discretion, and some are more lenient than others. We had a notoriously tough one who denies 96 or 97% of asylum applications.
What is usually their background, the immigration judges? Were they immigration lawyers before?
Typically.
Okay, so they take a job where they know they're going to get a regular income. Are they equivalent to a federal judge?
Only in a limited sense, in that the federal government's their employer. Right. But they handle just strictly immigration cases.
And there's not enough of them from what I can tell.
No.
So you went before a tough judge, and what did he want from you and your client?
So the thing you have to prove is that if Nestor was returned to Cameroon, that he was likely to face future persecution.
How do you prove that?
It's tough. The first thing you have is the declaration of the client. So, Nestor and I met for a couple of months frequently to get his story, everything that happened leading up to his arrest, his torture, fleeing to, he actually went to a couple different villages and they tracked him down. And then he left from Nigeria, and then members of the gendarmerie kept coming by and, finding his family and asking, where is he? So getting that story laid out.
Well, let me interrupt you here. How do you prove that story? I mean, when you go into court, any case, you have to provide evidence. Your client, a client, could be telling you the wild story, right? And you're writing it down in detail. But how do you prove that he was in jail? How do you prove that he was tortured? How do you prove that if he was returned to the country that he might be killed?
Right. So we need a lot of corroborating evidence. And that's where it gets hard, because detainees don't have access to email or their own phone. If they want to call home, it's like $1 a minute, and they make $1 a day if they work at the detention center. So it's really on the lawyer to try and marshal this evidence, and thank God for WhatsApp and Facebook. And so I had some really good witnesses. His wife, he was friends with an attorney in...
Wife was still in Africa, right?
Yeah, she was still in Cameroon with their 3 kids.
So how is she a witness here?
So you get declarations from them. And so we got a declaration from her, a declaration from his lawyer, who was a friend, that basically says, yes, this is what happened.
And would you say that probably the most important bit of evidence was the video on Facebook?
That was very helpful. The difficult thing is that the courts won't accept the video.
Why?
They just don't accept video. So what I had to do is go through, take screenshots, and then Nestor's brother was living in Virginia Beach, and so I was working with him a lot. He came, I think, 7 years prior on a diversity visa, but was still very familiar with what was happening in Cameroon and the Civil War. So he said, these are screenshots from the video that Nestor posted online, and that's how you get the subject matter of the video.
And how are you getting these affidavits? How are you getting these screenshots? By email?
Yes.
Okay. And how long is this process taking?
I think we had three months to get his case ready.
So there is a time limit.
Yeah.
How are living conditions in the detention center? Is that what they call it, a detention center?
They've changed the name to the Northwest ICE Processing Center, but for all intents and purposes, it's a maximum security prison.
So it's a prison?
Oh, yeah.
Are you locked up in cells there?
Yeah.
You are?
Yeah.
Do they allow them to work in the detention center?
Yes, but they get $1 an hour or $1, it's some ridiculous rate, to, spend at the commissary or whatever. But the conditions are not good.
So 3 months later, you go before a judge, you present all this information, then what?
Then you have, the ICE attorney on the other side who really their sole job is to cast doubt on the credibility.
Are they government employees too?
They are.
Did you get to know this prosecutor much or what?
No, not at all. And I wouldn't have had any desire to.
Did you know their background? Were they immigration lawyers before or what?
It depends. Some of them are, county level prosecutors. Some go straight into being an ICE attorney. I honestly, I don't know how you wind up in that line of work.
So their job is to cast doubt, and then a judge rules.
Yes.
Did the judge rule after this, or they want more information?
No, they ruled pretty quickly. And part of that was, it was a horrible thing that happened, but it was great for the case. Nestor's wife and his 1-year-old son were attacked by the Cameroonian military.
So they were still in Cameroon?
Yes.
Okay, and how did you know this?
So Nestor's brother let me know that he had heard from Laura that gendarmerie came looking for Nestor, and she said he's not here, and they said they were going to come back, and they threw boiling water on her and the 1-year-old and another friend that was in the house.
So she, the wife, has access to email and can send photographs of what happened.
WhatsApp is what I use a lot, and I often wonder how it would be putting one of these cases together without WhatsApp, because it's so helpful for communicating with folks in Africa or Russia.
So they won't accept a Facebook video, but they will accept photographs sent through WhatsApp.
Yes. So the photographs accompanied by a declaration saying this is what the photographs show. And we also had hospital records because his son had to go stay in the hospital for...
And that all of this took place within that 3 months.
Yes, it happened while we were working up his case, and it happened after the deadline to submit evidence. So then I had to file a motion to submit untimely evidence, which the government opposed, even though I couldn't have submitted it earlier because it hadn't happened yet. And that's what the judge said.
So how long does the decision take to come down?
It's immediate. Yeah, you close your evidence, and at least in my experience, they've always said, this person meets the requirements of asylum, and I'm exercising my discretion to grant it.
Okay, and now what are they classified as?
So it depends. There's Nestor has full refugee status, which is good because it comes with a whole host of benefits. And the most important thing is, if you're granted refugee status, you can petition to bring your family over. There's another thing called withholding of removal, where they're not going to send you home, but you're also not a refugee. And that doesn't come with as many benefits. You can't bring your family over.
Can you get a job while you're here?
Yes, you can apply for a work permit.
So currently, what is his status?
He just got his green card.
So the next step from where he was is to get a green card.
Yes.
And now that's 5 years to be eligible for citizenship.
Correct.
You did this free, pro bono, correct?
Right.
How many hours did this take for you?
Since it was my first case and I was, there was a learning curve, it probably took longer, but most of my cases involve about 100 hours of work. I'd say this one was a little bit more.
Now, so he was allowed, once he's approved, he's allowed to leave the detention center.
Yeah, but like kicked out.
Kicked out, meaning no money, no nothing.
He got the backpack that he arrived at the border with, that had his clothes. He was able to purchase a sweatsuit from the commissary before being released.
So he wasn't naked.
Right. And they just let you out. They, put you outside the barbed wire gates, and that's it.
And what do you do then?
That was shocking to me. I hadn't really thought about the next steps because I didn't, in my mind, want to jinx it or get our hopes up or anything. It was like, just focus on the trial. But then I found out so the judge granted asylum, and I was like, what's next? And he said, oh, well, he's going to be released today. And this was a couple days before Thanksgiving. And so I knew we weren't going to be able to get him a flight to his brother in Virginia.
So he did have a brother in Virginia.
Yeah. But if you don't have family here or resources, you're kind of screwed.
SOL.
Yeah. And there's a great group called Aid Northwest, and they have a motorhome outside the detention center where they help people who don't have anyone to, you know, get set up with a place to live or get travel arrangements or things like that.
You going above and beyond providing free legal assistance and all your time and probably, you know, helping financially, you also took him in as a family member. Is that right?
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
You know, at this point, we had become very close because you're spending so much time with them. And I think the big thing that happens is he began to trust me because that's hard at first when you just have this stranger come in that says, I'm going to help you, but you've never met him before, don't know anything about him.
Well, in a way, he's got nothing to lose.
Right. So I said, all right, well, you're going to come home with me tonight. And we were leaving for Bellingham the next day for Thanksgiving to go spend it with my family.
Came here?
We were living in South Seattle at the time. And we had a spare bedroom. And a lot of my coworkers donated a lot of clothes for him, which was really cool. Got him some toiletries, just kind of helped get him set up, got him a suitcase. And so then we spent a night at my house in Seattle, and I said, what do you want to eat? And he said, I've always wanted to try pizza. So we went out for pizza, and then the next day I took him to Thanksgiving in Bellingham with my family.
Probably never had a turkey.
He'd had turkey, but you know, Thanksgiving isn't something you celebrate in Cameroon. And yeah, he just became a member of the family since then. And so I think we spent like 4 days together after he was released, and then...
It's so wonderful. That's why we want to do this story. I mean, his story and your story combined is the American dream. It really is, you know. And currently, with so many people at the southern border trying to come to the United States, many of them also are in equal political asylum status, you know, and can't get in. It's, you know, it's a heart-rendering story, heartwarming story. We have Nestor with us now, and we're going to bring him on right now. It is my great privilege to introduce Nestor Munki. Welcome to the show, Nestor.
Thank you very much.
Nestor, we have heard so much about you and your journey here to the United States. Can you tell us in detail? You know, you joined a group in southern Cameroon, and you wanted basically not independence, but you wanted to be able to speak English, right? Yes. For the government officers and everybody to communicate with you in English, and the president of was it Northern Cameroon? He doesn't go along with that, right? He wants everybody to speak French. When you joined this independence group, did you know you might be putting your life in danger?
No, I didn't know.
But you soon found out, right?
I soon found out.
They came to your house, they arrested you, they tortured you. What was that torture like?
I think it was like my second time being tortured that way.
Tell us how they tortured you.
Torture was being carried out by the gendarmes. And what they have to do is put you like flat on the floor so that the soles of your feet can face them, and they use the flat side of the machete to slap the soles of your feet with.
The machete, right? How long did they do that for?
A number of strokes that they give you every morning.
Every morning?
Yes.
Wow. And they wanted you to turn over the names of some of
the leaders that did the same thing that we did.
And you didn't do that, did you?
I didn't give their names because I was also in the position.
Okay. Fortunately, they let you go home because your wife was ill, right? Yes. After your child was born. Yeah. And when you got word that you needed to leave the country, tell us your feeling about you had to leave, but your wife and children had to stay there, correct?
Yes. It happened, my wife was pregnant, so I didn't expect to go out of the country. So when they summoned me back to the gendarmes, somebody whispered to me what was going to happen. So the best option was for me to leave the country.
Okay. Where did you go first?
First of all, I went to my village. It's called Ndu Town in the northwest region of Cameroon. Then we were in the village for some time and they still came after me. So I went to the village of the village. That's a more remote one. And it kept going on. That's when I decided to leave the country.
And what country did you go to?
I went to Nigeria.
Okay. Do you have friends there? Do you know anybody there?
I have nobody there.
How did you have any money with you?
Yes, I had a little bit of money with me because I was a businessman.
And when you're in Nigeria, you've had further notices that you might be captured and sent back to Cameroon, right?
Yes, and some people similar to me were sent back to Cameroon that time.
Okay, and that's when you made a decision to go to Ecuador, is it?
Yes, to Ecuador.
Now you've got a long trek. Did you walk all the way up to the southern border?
It was a combination of boat, bus, walking in the jungle for like 6 days.
You don't speak Spanish.
Yeah, I speak a little bit of it for the length of time that I was in the Spanish country.
Well, along the journey, as everybody has watched on TV and everybody being interviewed, there are people that take advantage of refugees, right? How did you know that if you gave somebody some money to get on a boat for them to take you someplace, that you were dealing with somebody that was genuine?
I had a bad experience somewhere in Colombia when we gave some money to some people, but they never showed up.
Money to do what? To take you someplace?
To take us through the jungle to Panama. So they collected the money and never showed up the time they said they were going to pick us up from. It was a town called Turbo.
Was there any time that you ran out of money?
Yes, many times.
Well, how did you make money then?
My brother here was sending me money constantly.
How would he send money to you?
He will send to people like in Colombia, they will send to Colombians.
Yeah, but how does he know anybody in Colombia?
We had WhatsApp.
So they can send money through WhatsApp?
Yeah, no, through Western Union.
Western Union.
The communication was through WhatsApp.
Do you have ID that you would go to Western Union?
I did not have ID.
Well, how do they know it's you?
They did not send the money to me.
They send it to the other person.
My brother was sending the money to the other person.
How do you trust this other person?
It was just a game. Like you just...
No, but I mean, they probably took a percentage of that money.
Yeah, they took a percentage.
So how much money did your brother send?
He sent me money like 4 times.
But thousands of dollars?
Thousands of dollars, yes. Hundreds of dollars, yes.
You're lucky you had a brother here.
I'm lucky.
So finally, what were some of your worst experiences going through Mexico, for example, with gangs?
My worst experience wasn't actually in Mexico. It was between Colombia and Panama.
What happened?
When we were in the jungle, a lot of things happened, a lot of gang and a lot of gunshots. So all the time we were in the jungle, we were scared, like constantly hiding from the unknown.
So when you say we, how many is in this we group?
Yeah, I left Nigeria by myself, but on my way down like towards Colombia, it was like a group we were like 400 in the jungle. There were Indians, a combination of other people from other...
Men, women, and children.
Men, women, and children.
Okay. Did you all stick together?
Yeah, we stuck together.
Did any of them get hurt, killed?
Yes.
Raped?
Not raped, but a lot of them got like accidents.
Because they had an accident or someone harmed them?
The group I was with wasn't harmed by someone. But the other groups that were coming behind us were harmed by someone. But the ones that saw them with my eyes were the ones that were harmed by the nature of the travel in the jungle.
So you eventually ended up getting to the southern border, Tijuana.
Yes.
What went through your head? Did you know what Tijuana was?
I have never known what Tijuana was.
Did you know you were close to the United States?
Yes.
How did you know that?
People were telling us we are close to the United States.
And what was going through your mind? I finally made it.
I was looking for freedom, so at that time I was very excited.
I like that phrase. I was looking for freedom. You know, too often in America today, we're a country built on immigrants. My grandparents came here from Ireland. Too often people forget, you know, this is supposed to be the land of the free. We're supposed to welcome people like you. And they don't have a personal connection. And thank God, you know, Matt cared enough about you and about people like you to be able to help you. So once you got to the immigration center in Tijuana, what was that process like?
It was a process where we had to come to the border between Mexico and the US. We register and wait until a time that we need to come in reaches before we can come. And
so you register, but where do you sleep after that? You're still in Mexico.
I'm still in Mexico. So we got a large room where all of us slept, a lot of.
Who got the large room for you?
I organized a large room because by then I was speaking a little bit of Spanish. So we met one, somebody who was there, he owned a restaurant. Then he rented that part to me and I shared with my.
So you paid money to rent an area?
Yes.
Did you pay it to?
Owner of the place.
A Mexican national.
He's not a Mexican. He was from, I'm trying to.
But an immigrant, another refugee.
Yes.
Refugees making money off refugees.
Yes.
Okay, so finally you appear by yourself, correct?
Yes.
And you present what evidence? How do they know you're not lying?
When this happened, when I was doing the video on Facebook, I wasn't doing it like I will one day use it somewhere to seek political asylum. It was just updating people who believed in my belief about the protest of what was going on in that area. Yeah. So once we got here and they needed a lot of evidence, I think the only person I will need to thank is Matt, because I did not know I had to present.
I understand, but before we get to Matt, I'm talking about when you're at the border, because eventually they approved you to come in on a temporary basis, right? And they shipped you, did they fly you to Seattle, Tacoma?
They transported us by bus to Arizona. From Arizona, they flew us to Washington.
But in order to get to Arizona, in order to get that step into the United States, what did you present to those authorities?
I had my voter's card, a copy of my ID card.
And you just said, I'm seeking political asylum.
Yes, and there was, they call it a credible fear interview at the border.
Right. With you.
Yes.
Is that videotape by any chance?
No.
No. So someone believed you.
Yes.
Okay, good. And then that's how you ran into Matt.
But then I did not run into Matt. It was.
What was it like in the detention center in Tacoma?
My experience there in the detention center was different because where I come from and the torture that I faced in my own prisons, actually they call it detention center here, but it's a prison.
Yeah, but it was better than Cameroon.
It was better than Cameroon.
So it was like being in the Hilton Hotel, right?
To me, that's what I felt. It was much better.
So did you do a job while you were there?
Yes, I was earning $1 in the detention center for a day.
$1 a day?
Yes.
And what did you do for that?
Cleaning the restroom.
How many hours a day? 8 hours?
I'll clean it in the morning and in the evening.
And the dollar allowed you to do what?
Get gross.
Okay. Did your brother continue sending money to you?
Yes.
Oh, that was a tremendous help, wasn't it?
Yes.
Okay. So you met Matt, and now you're You've got approval. You're outside the detention center. What goes through your head?
Freedom.
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 But you have another big worry, your wife and your kids.
Yes, but freedom was the first thing. And the time I was running, there's a saying in Africa that what pursues you is what determines your speed.
Pursues you is what determines your speed.
Yes.
So now that you have been in the United States, well, before we get to that, when your wife and your family came here, what was running through your head then?
Happiness.
Happiness.
I hadn't seen them in a very long time.
You still have relatives in Cameroon, right?
I do.
Parents?
Parents are deceased, yeah.
Okay, but does the Cameroonian police persecute anybody that's related to you now?
A lot is still going on right now.
They do, because you're here in the United States.
Yes.
What do you have to say to America now that you're here?
What I would say is for America to grant a lot of people similar to me asylum here, because what is going on back there in Cameroon is worse than what they might believe. It's just for somebody to see what is going on so that when somebody comes here and says he's from Cameroon, there will be no need for them to pass through the same procedure before being granted asylum, because it's a lot going back on my country.
Right. When Matt and I first talked, I told him my experience of sponsoring, bringing to the United States 50 relatives of my Vietnamese wife. And I can say this to you, it's been many years now, 50 years, right? I can say this, that every single one of them appreciated the new life that they have, prospered and became good citizens, hardworking. And that's what we have to do in life, help other people. Because countries like yours, countries in South America, you've traveled through them. You know, many of the people are persecuted. I want to thank you very much for being here today. I know you came from Virginia, right?
Yes.
You live in Virginia now.
Yeah.
And thank you very much for taking your time to do that.
You're welcome.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
For anybody watching this show who's a lawyer that wants to volunteer their services, and there's a great need for lawyers to do this, to marshal, and all the legal juggernaut that you have to go through to get somebody here in the United States, what would be your first recommendation to them, considering the fact that they probably know nothing about immigration law?
The first bit of advice I think is the most important, and it's don't wait for the right time. Because lawyers are always super busy. And so if you say, oh, I'm going to wait until things settle down in my practice to take one of these cases on, it will never happen. So if you're going to do it, just do it. In terms of learning the legal side of things, if I can do it, anyone can. And you do have support. Like, I had a mentor at Northwest Immigrant Rights Project who I would communicate with frequently.
Is that a lawyer or the head of the project?
He was the pro bono coordinator who also practices asylum law.
How many other lawyers with this particular project are working right now to help other refugees come into the United States? About?
I don't know the answer to how many pro bono lawyers are working for them currently, but I do know that it's not enough.
If anybody ever wanted to do some volunteer work, it's very needed in this particular.
Yeah, I actually wrote an article about it after the fact and said, hey, lawyers, you should do this.
For all the refugees, for all the people in the world that are seeking political asylum to the United States, what do you recommend them to do?
What's really helpful is if you bring corroborating evidence with you.
And please explain corroborating evidence.
Photos, letters.
Not Facebook videos.
Facebook videos are helpful because you can, in a roundabout way, get them into evidence. But videos are helpful.
Do people show injuries
That is very helpful because that's something that's used to cast doubt on credibility. And I feel bad bringing this up, but the way that they tortured Nestor doesn't leave marks. And that's actually why a couple attorneys turned down his case, because he didn't have any visible marks. They beat you on the bottom of on the soles of your feet with the flat side of a machete, which is excruciatingly painful, but doesn't leave a mark.
Now, what about applying for a work permit? You wait till you get here?
Yes.
Would you encourage people that are genuinely seeking political asylum in the United States to continue doing that, considering the atmosphere that we have, not only in the United States? About half the country is not receptive to receiving anybody at all. And that also applies to Europe now. It seems that this is a growing problem, an issue. And I don't think industrialized countries know how to deal with it.
They don't. And I think what a lot of folks lose sight of is the reason they're seeking asylum is because things are really bad in their country, and they're doing it for their family. Like, Nestor didn't see his family for 4 years, and they are back home in a civil war. And, you know, he had 4 years of constant worry about them.
You know, when he got approved for political asylum, and what was the exact classification again?
Just refugee status.
Was he eligible to sponsor his family immediately?
Yes, but that is a very long.
And you helped with that too?
I did.
How long did that process take?
So he was released in November of 2018, and I think it was maybe December of 2021 that they finally got here.
And how did they get here?
So you file a petition to bring them over, and those take anywhere from 18 to 36 months to process.
Where?
With the USCIS.
18 to 36 months.
Yeah.
Are you able to check on the status of it?
So I filed several motions to expedite his application, because this whole time his family was in active danger. And it's like, the longer you make them wait, the more danger they're in.
But the government there knows that there's activity on this end seeking to bring them here.
No, they don't know.
Because if they did, they might harm them.
Yeah.
So how did they eventually end up coming to the United States? Did they catch a flight?
Yes.
And who paid for that? You?
Part of it, yeah. I actually, after he was released, I started a GoFundMe to raise funds to pay for airfare to get them here and have some starting money. So we got some money from that, and then
Are people receptive to that?
Yeah.
Anything else you want to add for anybody looking to do what you did? And thank God you did what you did.
It's a necessary and great thing to do. I've had several clients since Nestor. I'm still, very close with all of them. I talk to all of them quite a bit. And it's a big need. And the reason is folks have really strong cases, but the system, our immigration system, if you don't have an attorney, it's almost impossible to, hit the requirements you need and get the evidence you need, particularly if you're detained, to prove your asylum claim.
Yeah, just curious. There are younger people under 18 that are seeking asylum here too. Are their cases more difficult?
I wouldn't say they're more difficult.
What other countries now have you been able to help people come from?
Well, I have a soft spot for Cameroon, so I've done a few of those cases. I've also done Russia, and I just recently had a case from Senegal.
Wow. Okay, cool. Well, thanks for all the work that you do. I mean, America is proud of you. I'm proud of you. Now, that's why we want to do this show, and I want to thank you for being on the show.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. You can get more information about our guest and the issues at insiderexclusive.com.